Okay, we're going to bring you more of our special coverage of the Iowa caucuses in just a moment. But before we do that, we want to update you on our major international news story this hour, the deadly Wuhan coronavirus, which is showing no sign of slowing down. Belgium has confirmed its first case. Hong Kong has just announced another, but mainland China is still dealing with the absolute worst of this outbreak. There are now more than 20,000 global cases. Only 190 of those are outside mainland China. The virus has killed at least 427 people, with Hong Kong and the Philippines each reporting one death. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization, the WHO, says that there have been 27 cases of human-to-human transmission in 9 countries outside mainland China. But the group also has some good news.
Please tell us some good news.
Currently, we are not in a pandemic. We are at the phase where it's an epidemic with multiple foci, and we will try to extinguish the transmission in each of these foci.
China is now sending patients to the first new hospital it's built that is just outside the epicenter, Wuhan. The state media says a second hospital that's under construction is also nearly done. China's military is also preparing hundreds of beds in makeshift hospitals to use for more sick patients.
Let's back up. I want to recheck what she just said. I didn't quite understand her lingo. I think she was from another country. This is an eerie feeling of watching all these hospital beds being prepared for all these victims. It speaks volumes, literal volumes, of engaging in the severity of what they're engaged in over in that area. And to think that they made one hospital in 6 or 7 days, and now they're making another hospital. Look at the floor. It's flat. It's clean. Probably air conditioning or heated. Probably a controlled environment for the patients. To think that they have done that to accommodate over 1,000 people in less than a week. In one way, it speaks volumes about how aggressive and their being, what's the word I'm looking for? Creative, their craft, being crafty, and being able to do that and put those walls up that quick, and a ceiling and a top. I guess it's got a ceiling and a top on it. You can't put patients up underneath rainy and cold, wet, hot environments. But to think that they have done this in that length of time speaks volumes about the severity, about the urgency. Because I don't think that we've ever seen anything like this before out of any country. And I'm not even for sure that America is even capable of doing anything like this. I don't know what it takes to make something. I'm pretty sure the dynamics will come out eventually towards what the size is, how deep the floors was poured, what type of walls, what the square yardage, the square footage is that they done this in. But to think that they took all those excavating machines and done this in that length of time is just absolutely remarkable in one aspect, but in another aspect it speaks volumes about the intensity and the severity of this. Let's back up. Let's watch what this woman has to say, because I couldn't quite understand her lingo.
And outside mainland China, the virus has killed at least 427 people, with Hong Kong and the Philippines each reporting one death. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization, the WHO, says that there have been 27 cases of human-to-human transmission in 9 countries outside mainland China. But the group also has some good news.
Listen to this.
Currently, we are not in a pandemic. We are at the phase where it's an epidemic with multiple foci. And
that's in Switzerland? Switzerland? Javava? Jovov, Jonova, and she is speaking in behalf of Global Infection Hazard Preparedness, World Health Organization. That's who she's speaking in behalf of, pertaining to the coronavirus. But listen to what she says.
We will try to.
Let me back up just for a second. Stop.
The group also has some good news.
Now listen.
Currently, we are not in a pandemic. We are at the phase where it's an epidemic with multiple foci, and we will try to extinguish the transmission in each of these foci.
Okay, she must be talking about her country over there, that they're not in an actual epidemic. That's the way that I interpreted what she said. I had to listen to it 3 or 4 different times because she has such of a brog. Her brog was different. Her accent was different. Is that the way everybody speaks over there? That's very, wowing, I guess would be the right word. Wow. I didn't know they had such of an accent. Cool.
China is now sending patients to the first new hospital it's built that is just outside the epicenter, Wuhan. The state media says a second hospital that's under construction is also nearly done. China's military is also preparing hundreds of beds in makeshift hospitals to use for more sick patients. And we're learning more about how Chinese authorities tried to silence one of the first doctors to sound a warning about the virus. As David Culver reports from Beijing, now that doctor has fallen ill.
In a matter of days, Dr. Li Wenliang went from treating patients to becoming one. The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus. But if action had been taken when he and others started sounding alarms, the severity of the outbreak might have been understood sooner. Struggling to communicate, Li spoke with CNN briefly by phone. You can hear the hospital machines pulsing in the background. It was back in late December when Li first warned friends on WeChat about a SARS-like disease going around. Li sent a group message saying that a test result from a patient quarantined at the hospital where he worked showed a patient had a coronavirus. But hours after hitting send, Wuhan city health officials tracked Li down, questioning where he got the information. Within days, they closed the suspected source of the virus, this seafood market, and they announced the outbreak. But instead of being praised, Li got a call from Wuhan City Police. With Li coughing too much and breathing too poorly to speak by phone, we asked Li by text, "How did you feel when this happened?" "I felt a little afraid I would be detained, afraid my family would worry," Li responded. He agreed to sign this document, admitting to spreading rumors online and severely disrupting social order. It reads, "We want you to cooperate with the police and listen to our reminder and stop the illegal act. Can you do that?" Li answered, "Yes, I can."
In the weeks that followed, the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission maintained that there was no obvious evidence for human-to-human transmission, no infection of healthcare workers, and that the outbreak was, in their words, preventable and controllable. And with that, the people of Wuhan continued about their normal lives.
Then came a sudden jump in infections. China's central government took over, scrambling to contain a spreading virus with a rising death toll. Chinese state media first reported that Li was one of several whistleblowers silenced by police. Calls for Li and the others to be vindicated grew online. China's Supreme Court even weighed in, adding, quote, "It might have been a fortunate thing if the public had listened to this rumor at the time." But for many, including Li and his parents, it was too late. They all contracted the coronavirus. Li is now fighting for his life, alone in quarantine, but online, considered a hero. Tens of thousands praising his attempts to sound the alarm, ahead of what's become a global health emergency.
That's David Culver reporting there from mainland China. Now we take you back to our coverage of the 2020 Iowa presidential caucuses, headed by our own Anderson Cooper.
Before we go back to this, which is basically chaos. They should have already got the results way before now, which shows something obviously has happened here in regard to the voting practices. I had no idea that this story was going to come about here on CNN towards this individual who was willing to put himself and his family out there on the limb that basically got reprimanded by his own government for doing the right thing. It kind of reminds me of what that I done towards sticking my neck out and putting my family out on a limb towards identifying a cover-up that occurred out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And rather than me being patted on the back and told, wow, we appreciate you breaking the ice on that, because we all kind of suspected that to begin with, rather than me being patted on the back, I'm still being treated as the number one enemy of this nation. I'm still being treated as a criminal. I'm still being treated as some sort of a monster. And the whole time, I was only trying to bring transparency to the truth. I don't expect for none of my people, especially those around here, that are going to do the right thing. It's pretty obvious they don't care about doing the right thing, regardless whether it be Tommy Thomas, Tommy Moore, or the court system up here in Weakley County pertaining to how they gave in to all this hokey-pokey stuff that was going on out here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee. I don't expect to be treated as a hero by the Good Samaritans out in Oklahoma City or up in Kentucky for trying to save land between the lakes from it being inundated by profiteerists. I don't expect to get rewarded and treated like a hero right here in my own community. Those who have shown themselves of being such ugly, unfair, unjust, submissive, I guess, to the devil's will rather than God's will. I don't expect to be treated really and truly any different than what this man who discovered the disease at first, that wanted to alert his people over in his country. But what I do expect is for them to be fair-minded and open-minded as they're sitting and judging me in these regards. No, I've never expected for people to put down little red petals and pull out the red carpet and treat me like I was some sort of a goddess or like I was some sort of a hero. A matter of fact, I don't want to be treated that way. I want to be treated equal as any other brother or sister in Christ. That's all I've ever asked for. But to this day, February the 4th, I believe it's the 4th, 2020, in the 21st century, I'm still not being treated as an equal. Randy Brundridge, the mayor in Martin, Tennessee, still has yet to lift the ban on Central Baptist Church that I was a member of for almost a year. The First Baptist Church there in Martin, Tennessee, has yet to write me a letter or confront to me and say, Dennis, we're sorry about the misunderstanding. You're more than welcome to come here if you choose. Alamo Baptist Church, right down the road here from where I live, less than 2 miles, has yet to send an appointee, regardless whether it was David Nelson or whoever, to say, Juby, you're always welcome at our church. First Baptist Church, right up the road here at a little community called Sedonia, has yet to send any delegate of telling me, Dennis, you're more than welcome. The Assembly of God, the Methodists, all these other churches that blackballed me, that wanted to treat me like I was some sort of a heretic or treat me like I was some sort of an enemy has yet to mark their plate clean pertaining to how that they have unjustly accused an individual, the same way that the government accused this individual
Iowa
of trying to do the right thing, and instead of him being treated in that regard, he was actually treated as an enemy of the state or an enemy of
Currently,
of the country. And it's really, really sad that we live in a society today that want to reward the bad and persecute the good. And it's not just happening here. It's happening in places like China. It's happening in places like South America. It's happening in places all over the world where we're seeing people that are willing to blow the whistle, are willing to tell the truth about certain matters, and instead of that person being treated fairly and being treated in a good way, they're being persecuted. They're being demented. They're being dehumanized. They're being demonized by a society that is so ingrained in their own evil, demonic despair that they can't detect the difference between the good and the bad. That is so sad. That is so sad that we live in the 21st century of people that cannot identify the difference between good and bad, right and wrong.
Now sending patients to the first new hospital it's built that is just outside the epicenter, Wuhan. State media says a second hospital that's under construction is also nearly done. China's military is also preparing hundreds of beds in makeshift hospitals to use for more sick patients. And we're learning more about how Chinese authorities tried to silence one of the first doctors to sound a warning about the virus. As David Culver reports from Beijing, now that doctor has fallen ill.
In a matter of days, Dr. Li Wenliang went from treating patients to becoming one. The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus. But if action had been taken when he and others started sounding alarms, the severity of the outbreak might have been understood sooner. Struggling to communicate, Li spoke with CNN briefly by phone. You can hear the hospital machines pulsing in the background. It was back in late December when Li first warned friends on WeChat about a SARS-like disease going around. Li sent a group message saying that a test result from a patient quarantined at the hospital where he worked showed a patient had a coronavirus. But hours after hitting send, Wuhan city health officials tracked Li down, questioning where he got the information. Within days, they closed the suspected source of the virus, this seafood market, and they announced the outbreak. But instead of being praised, Li got a call from Wuhan City Police. With Li coughing too much and breathing too poorly to speak by phone, we asked Li by text, "How did you feel when this happened?" "I felt a little afraid I would be detained, afraid my family would worry," Li responded. He agreed to sign this document, admitting to spreading rumors online and severely disrupting social order. It reads, "We want you to cooperate with the police and listen to our reminder and stop the illegal act."
What did I have to agree in Weakley County in 2005 whenever they falsely accused and charged me of falsifying files? The exact same thing. The exact same thing. The thing about it is, in 2005, I wasn't in no theater to create havoc, to create some sort of a panic. These people in this area have been so engaged in their own darkness that they obviously don't know how to read the laws and understand their laws And they don't know whenever somebody gets cornered, the way that the Martin police officers cornered me at the time in 2005. And I told them that you can have an abundance of sources pertaining to an explosion and it not be on a level of terrorism or harm or hurt to society. You can have an explosion of gossip. You can have an explosion of Bermuda grass. You can have an explosion of various accusations going on in your life to the degree that, yes, I did wind up on the Channel 6 News out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, verifying my words was true, that yes, I did wind up on the news. Yes, there has been an explosion of controversy in my life. Yes, to this day, I have yet to get any formal or informal apology either from the mayor or anybody below the mayor in the great city of Martin, Tennessee, where the University of UTM resides in. I have yet to get any type of formal apology from the UTM College of telling me that I was welcome to go back on campus pertaining to doing library work and going to the library and having some personal things that I needed to require there at the college. I have yet to get a formal or an informal apology from the judicial system in this particular region or this area. And just the other day, I'm not going to mention his name because I won't have to certain individuals, I found out that a cop that lives pretty close to this area wound up quitting Weakley County Sheriff's Department and going to work at Union City at Obion. I guess it's the Obion County Sheriff's Department. I don't know. It may have been the Obion County Union City Police Department. But anyways, he quit the Sheriff's Department because of all the corruption that he has seen, that he does not want to be a part of, pertaining to what is going on in Weakley County, Tennessee to this day. And whenever you start losing your police force on account of how the judges and the prosecuting attorney and other law enforcement agencies is handling their business, that is a clear sign that you got a problem with your judicial law enforcement agency in this area. So sad. So sad. The judge in Paducah, Kentucky, the federal judge, should have patted me on the back and said, Mr. Jackson, we commend you for you wanting to go up against the axis of evil, regardless whether it was the spiritual perspective or the psychological perspective or the metaphor perspective or the physical perspective. We commend you, even if it was from a metaphor perspective. We commend you, Mr. Jackson, for wanting to stand up and rid the axis of evil. Instead, what did I get from the federal court system in the great state of Kentucky and Western Kentucky? I got 6 months drug out of my life. The second time. The first time, I got evaluated by Four Rivers Behavior Center. I can prove all this. I've got paperwork to validate what I'm saying. You can look it up online under the pretense of the Right to Know Act. First time, it cost me an overnight stay in a cemetery being ate up by mosquitoes and almost $200 for a wrecker bill or a rollback bill. A second time, it cost me 6 months being studied in MCC in downtown Chicago. And the third time, it not only cost me and jeopardized what I had going on out in Oklahoma pertaining to my job, my home, my car, but it also took 9.5 months out of my life that I never should have been charged for to begin with, and they wound up poisoning me with some sort of psycho medication to the degree that it caused obesity and breast enhancement in my life, just for trying to stand up and do the right, appropriate thing. Now you tell me that this country hadn't been turned upside down since the latter part of the Ronald Reagan and the Bush era. Whenever you have church members and preachers and ministers and counselors that can't identify the difference between something that is sinful versus something that is not sinful, whenever you have people that cannot identify the difference between good and bad, right and wrong, you have a messed up environment that has turned out to be a toxic environment, and that's exactly what those people over there are dealing with right now over in that area. The corona outbreak virus. And I just pray to God that somebody is smart enough to figure out an anti bacteria drug that can combat against it to the point that it does not become fatal right here in the USA. Right here in the United States of America. We could be very well experiencing the same thing on the same level that they're experiencing right now over there. So 2 thumbs up to the individual that wanted to do the right thing towards being the whistleblower. 2 thumbs up towards the whistleblower that blowed the whistle in regards to what Donald Trump was not only accused of, but now what Donald Trump has been proven of towards him doing stuff inappropriately, towards withholding precious aid from the Ukrainian government people. 2 thumbs up to the whistleblower that achieved that achievement in bringing it to the American and the world's attention. 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up.
Can you do that, Leanne? Disrupting social order. It reads, "We want you to cooperate with the police and listen to our reminder and stop the illegal act. Can you do that?" Lee answered, "Yes, I can."
In the weeks that followed, the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission maintained that there was no obvious evidence for human-to-human transmission.
In other words, they wanted to shut him up. Can you do that? And of course, with his government being the way that his government is, if he didn't agree to do that, probably within a matter of hours, they would have been busting down that guy's door, and they would have been hauling him off to some sort of a compound, some sort of prison. So he knew to say what he said during the time that they asked him that. Can you do that? Yes, I can. But it still disregards the facts and the truth, which is this man tried to do the right thing and got punished and penalized on account of it. And how many times have we seen that again and again and again? Maybe not so much in my situation out in Waco and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, pertaining to being treated unjustly here in Northwest Tennessee. But how many times have we seen that again and again and again all throughout this planet towards people trying to do the right thing and being treated as if they're the villain, being treated as if they're the monster, even though they're trying to do the right thing? What has corrupted the minds of a society to the point that they're calling right wrong and wrong right? The demonic forces coming from the evil pits of hell. Satan and his demons have done this. Beginning all the way back into the late 80s. It is so sad in what society has turned out to be right now. It's a heartbreak.
No infection of healthcare workers, and that the outbreak was, in their words, preventable and controllable. And with that, the people of Wuhan continued about their normal lives.
Then came a sudden jump in infections. China's central government took over, scrambling to contain a spreading virus with a rising death toll. Chinese state media first reported that Li was one of several whistleblowers silenced by police. Calls for Li and the others to be vindicated grew online. China's Supreme Court even weighed in, adding, quote, "It might have been a fortunate thing if the public had listened to this rumor at the time."
Once more, he deserves to be vindicated. Which I'm going to leave this in my viewers' ears and in their heart. Do you think that people like myself, like Richard Jewell, that Clint Eastwood made the movie on, do you think that people like this and myself deserve to be vindicated in the eyes of the people, to clear the record that they're not horrible, horrible bad people, but if anything, they're only doing that in which what, as a good citizen, as a good Samaritan, would do. The same as that the person in the Bible that seen the man that had been robbed and beat up and tended to the stranger's wounds and took him to an inn and told the people to watch after him, take care of him, make sure he had proper food and water, and if he owed them anything else, to be sure to let him know that he would pay them for their services. He was being the Good Samaritan in the Bible. How come people that tried to be the Good Samaritan continue to be punished, continue to be looked down upon, continue to be prosecuted? I'm going to tell you why. It's because Satan has impenetrated these people's minds and these people's hearts to the point that people can no longer discern the difference between right and wrong. That's why. That's exactly why. Good luck to all of us, and shalom.
But for many, including Lee and his parents, it was too late. They all contracted the coronavirus. Lee is now fighting for his life, alone in quarantine, but online, considered a hero. Tens of thousands praising his attempts to sound the alarm, ahead of what's become a global health emergency.
As David...
A global. That means the planet. A global health emergency. Thank God for people like this individual. And I pray that God will miraculously heal him and heal his family, and that he will go on with his life towards being productive, because he sounds to me like the type of individual that I would like to have living right next to my home here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee. He sounds to me like a person that I would like to be engaged in towards having him as my friend, having him as my doctor, having him as a good Samaritan. Thanks again, and shalom.